Well, everyone, great turnout. Thank you for coming. Hi. My name's Jeff Krause. I'm the State Director for Southern California Mufon. Also here today, my Chief Investigator and Assistant State Director, Earl Gray Anderson. And I have a couple of my field investigators here today too. Benji, you want to stand up real quick? Mr. Benjamin Fields, one of my newest field investigators there. And anyone, if you have any astronomy questions, that's the man right there. Also back there, you probably met her coming in, another one of my field investigators, Miss Linda Fletchner.
Yay!
So we have a really, really great talk for everyone today. I'm excited. I can't wait to see this. Starting out is Colonel Robert Salas and Dr. Jean-Pierre Petit, who came all the way from France. They're going to give us a fantastic joint presentation that I personally have not seen, so I'm as excited as you are to see it. And I'm going to go ahead and shut up and let them have the floor, because y'all came to see them, not me. So I'll come back up at the end and let you know any new stuff going on with Mufon, so be sure to stick around. And right now, please give us a warm welcome for Robert Salas and Dr. Jean-Pierre Petit.
Thank you very much. This is going to be a first for us. We're going to speak together.
Maybe you can hand hold the mic, Robert.
I'd rather not, but how's that? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So we're going to speak jointly. And the reason for that is because Jean-Pierre, although he speaks excellent English, sometimes the words don't come out quite right. And also, he knows a lot more about this than I do as far as the science goes. I'll start out with the, please note the word possible science, because we're not making hard and fast claims about the science we're going to talk about, but I guarantee you this science is based in good, hard science. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yes. And it gets a little involved, and I hope you'll bear with us, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time to answer questions at the end. So with that, we'll start with an introduction. Many of you know that I've been speaking about this subject for some 20 plus years as a result of my military experience, and I've spoken in many cities in the U.S. and about 12 countries in the world. And it involves ET shutting down my nuclear weapons. And I'm convinced that's exactly what happened. And it was a message for the world. Message obvious is to please get rid of your nuclear weapons before you destroy yourselves. So I've written 2 books, Faded Giant and Unidentified, the UFO Phenomenon. They're both available on Amazon. I didn't bring any books with me, so I'm sorry I don't have any. And of course, my purpose is just public information. That's the reason I'm doing this. It's the reason I've done it for these 20-some years. I just want to inform people like you and the public in general about the reality of this subject. Dr. Petit is very much an accomplished physicist. He's an astrophysicist, cosmologist, and also has had experiences with the phenomenon, which he may or may not talk about. I don't know.
As you like. Go on.
Okay.
Go on.
And I'll let him talk a little bit more about his background, but I can tell you that he is a true scientist, and he's worked hard to bring the truth about this subject to the public. with papers. He's written many papers. He's also produced many videos for viewing by the public. I think we'll try to get your website up there.
Yeah.
Make sure people know how to get a hold of those videos.
Well, the paper was issued in.
Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead with your...
What's important is that I belong to the scientific community, so I have to speak inside this community, in their fields. So I have to publish in peer-reviewed top-level journal, not in a nephrologist journal. And that was a fight of 50 years, and I made a lot of papers. My last one, we're going to give some copy of this paper, is closely related to the interstellar travel, and was issued in Astrophysics and Space Science, which is a top-level journal. It was in last June, so it is very recent. But
And we have those papers, copies of those papers.
We have a copy of this paper. Just, of course, there are no scientists in the room, but it's just the beginning, as said, robot. So I'm going to speak in your top-level university and institute and meet people. Well, that's our mission.
And by the way, if any of you know of any scientists that might be interested in listening to Jean-Pierre speak to their groups, please let us know. Please let us know, because we'd like to get him more exposure to the scientific community here in the United States. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Because we know a lot about this question. And of course, I have to speak about this question immediately. I've been involved in a contact with aliens since 50 years. And it was first letters and phone calls and direct meeting. So it's very difficult for scientists to stand that, you know. And I can tell you that in France, I can write to colleagues and to laboratory, and they say, I'd like to present my work. They don't answer because they are deadly scared. I will present my work. My work are good. They can't critique that. But if I say this idea not mine, I got that from aliens, well, it's a mess, you know. You can't stand that, absolutely. But I have to tell that now, you know. I have to tell that because we had experience. We met aliens, we have scared, we have anything, we have been abducted and so on. We have to tell the truth. There is nothing but the truth now. It's time to tell the truth. We cannot hide that any longer. Even I'm scientist.
We'll go into more detail as to how Jean-Pierre came upon some of his ideas for his cosmology, and it is alien-based. It came from an alien civilization, and we'll go into that a little more. Well, many of you have seen some of these photographs. Let's see this works. This is very similar to one over Phoenix Lights. And by the way, many of you may not know, but a gigantic triangular craft like this was seen over Maqasad, Iraq in 2006 by a platoon of U.S. Army Rangers. These photographs here, this one, and this one are Rex Heflin, 1965. He was a road manager, or worked for the Orange County Department of Highways, and he was doing his job near El Toro Marine Base in August of '65, and had his Polaroid camera with him when these objects came, and he took about 4 photographs. This we'll talk a little bit about the smoke ring, because I have confirmation of another photograph where the smoke ring was taken. This smoke ring was left behind as one of the UFOs in the Heflin incident took off straight up. And this one we'll discuss a little bit more also. Well, I want to go through this. It may seem a little nerdy to you, but this is about discovering the truth of this phenomenon for your sake, personally, your personal truth about this phenomenon. And this is the kind of thing that I went through even after I had my own experience. It took me a while to really accept this fully, this phenomenon. And, I'm a left-brainer, so I really related to this guy, Socrates, who came up with a concept called deductive reasoning in mathematics, which is simply using facts that you've accepted as fact, right? And putting those facts together into some sort of a conclusion or a hypothesis and going on from there. So you start with saying to yourself, I'm really ignorant about this, but there is evidence. There is a lot of evidence out there, and we can put that evidence together. And then there's Plato, who said, the problem is not what is the truth, because that can be argued. It's really what's morally, spiritually just, what's right. What should the truth be, basically? It's more of a concept like that. And then if you're a believer in what Susan Sontag says, she was a writer and a philosopher, American, and she said, what's the truth? If it were not written down or spoken, there would be no truth. There'd only be what is. What is. So we used all of these concepts, I did, to come up with my truth on this phenomenon. And believe me, my truth is real. Okay, let's see if I can. Oops. I had trouble with this before, and it looks like I'm having trouble again. All right, well, we'll start with some of these facts that I know for sure, because I was there. This is the location I was. It shows the top side of what we call the launch control facility. This is the Oscar facility, assigned in Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. I was there in 1967 in control of 10 nuclear missiles. And sometime in the evening, I get a call from the guard, the main guard upstairs. We had 6 guards. And this is what he said. I want to report what we've been observing. We see lights traveling at very high speed over the site, stopping in midair. So traveling very high speed, stopping in midair, reversing course, and making 90-degree turns. And he said there was no engine noise, and they were not aircraft, obviously. They were simply lights, but he wanted to report it because it was so strange. I didn't know what to do with that kind of report, although these guys were very serious. We had control of nuclear weapons. And so we didn't get little chatty kind of conversations going. The only time they would talk to me is when they had some kind of an official report to make. So this was basically an official report of something going on outside. I kind of dismissed it. I didn't pay much attention to it. Hung up the phone, and then he called back in about 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and he was screaming into the phone. This time he's frightened, clearly frightened, and he said, "Sir, we're looking at." When I got him calmed down, because he didn't make any sense at first, he said, "We're looking at a pulsating red light, oval shape, it's huge. It's hovering above the front gate and pulsating a red light, about 40 feet long, oval shape, but he could see some sort of an outline inside the light." And he said, "What should I do?" And of course, I didn't know what to tell him. We've never had anything like that happen. But it did sound like we were under some sort of an attack in our facility. So I gave him instructions not to allow anything in. He had his men out there with their weapons drawn, and told him to go ahead and use those weapons if he had to. But that is what I'm telling you is factual. That's essentially what happened. And within a minute or so after that phone call, my missiles were disabled, all 10 of them, while this object was still above us, hovering there above the front gate. So these are facts. Now, the question is, what do we do with these facts? So I'm going to turn it over to Jean-Pierre, and he'll speak to possible science behind these facts. Jean-Pierre.
Of course. Well, of course there is science behind UFOs. At first, they can cruise at supersonic and hypersonic velocity in dense air without doing any noise, without doing any shock wave, any turbulence. And that's how I was involved in this, because I was a researcher in fluid dynamics, and I had a wind tunnel with supersonic blow, and then...
Sean, can you speak a little bit louder, please?
Closer to the microphone.
Closer to the microphone, yes. I was, wow. Mm-hmm. Can I get it higher? I don't know. What, is it good like that? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Well.
Want it higher?
Yes, a little bit higher. Yes. Okay.
Does the volume go any louder on that little amplifier that's in there?
No,
No, that's not it.
No,
this
good.
doesn't seem to be wanting to adjust either right now. There we go.
Ah, that's good. That is
Is that
better.
okay?
That's fine. Okay, so right there. Okay. You know, now, suppose you are coming from another planet. You want to convince people of the Earth that they are visited. What can they do? They can meet Mr. Robert Salas and switch off his side by side. Well, that's all. But there is a very efficient way to convince people in science. If you give scientific information, for example, in theoretical world, you give the solution of a problem. And then when you get this solution, it was it was in 1976. In 1976, I had this solution. I published a paper about that. And what was the message? The message is, your vision of the cosmology is not, it's very primitive. You have to think that you have not a single fold of the universe, but two. And in the second one, the arrow of time is reversed. In this second fold, the universe is enantiomorphic. And then the electric charge are reversed, and so on. We were two to receive this message. The second was Andrei Sakharov, the Russian, in 1967, 10 years ago. And so he made a work about it, and I made a work in my own side, and then I realized that it did something very similar. And in 1977, I used that to solve a mathematical problem, and it was magic. So for me, the question was simple. It doesn't come from the Earth. It was too much well, so I was involved in this story, like if you put your fingers in a trap, and you cannot escape that. So it was 50 years ago. And then I was curious about the source of this information. The source was in Spain. So I went to Spain. I went people who were in contact with those guys. They received letters, they had phone call, phone exchange. So, I was quite excited as a scientist. I am an adventurer too, I like adventure. So it was really funny to work on extraterrestrial information, you realize. So we went to Spain many times, and I published papers and works. And then they contacted me directly. Oh, I was asking to the Spaniard, I'd like to meet them. How is it possible? And they answered, well, we have asked them if it is possible, you could come to Madrid someday. So we went to Madrid in a special hotel, but it was just an analysis of our body. You know, we are like guinea pigs. We're guinea pigs. We have to think that they are very different from us. Then what I can tell you is that since 50 years, I am interested by the problem on the earth. I don't care if they have 3 fingers or 5 or 7, I don't care. If they are tall or small, this is not important. What's important is what is going on the earth, you know. And what is life? What is human life? What are we doing here? What is our history? And the message is very simple, you know. If you consider life as a phenomenon, this phenomenon shows that life grows in complexity and extends its communication field. And that's since the beginning of the first cell. And now this communication is complete over the earth. You can take your phone cell and call people on the other side. So is it the end of the story? No, it is not the end of the story. The next step is to get in touch with other people. And if I want to do that, I can swim over the ocean. I can take place on the wings of a big bird. I need technology, and that you have to understand is that technology was designed for that, nothing else. The technology was developed to make craft to go to another star. Can you think about that? Technology is so many things different, but you know, all this stuff are peripheral events. The main events is to make craft. And why do they contact us? You know, just because we arrive at the time we can understand that. We can listen from a theoretical point of view. We have the energy to do that. When you hear Michel Kaku talks to you about travel through wormhole and how much energy do you need, or you take the mass of the sun, you convert it into energy. No, it's much less than that. We are almost ready to make this kind of stuff. Well, okay, this is an image that shows, for example, some extent in MHD. So I first worked in MHD plants. MHD, magnetohydrodynamics, is the way how you convert kinetic energy into electricity and how you can act on fluid with electricity. It's not magic, you know. But you know, if you consider supersonic flight, you have shockwave. What is a shockwave? Shockwave occurs because the gas cannot escape your object. So if you have the gas with electromagnetic force, it works. So starting from this idea, I did hydraulic experiments and theoretical works. I conducted a PhD thesis. We had a lot of papers, but you know, it's almost a pass for me because cosmology was so much more exciting than this kind of stuff. You know, I was showing a drawing to your daughter. You know, suppose we have primitive people of New Guinea, and we see an airplane landing on a river, and then 2 guys take a little boat, and they went to the shore. So you have 2 technologies. The first, it makes the airplane to fly. And the second, you have pedals. And you know, it is so different. So the 2 guys say, oh, I have understood, we could make a boat and use pedal and we could move on the river. But it's so different. And you know, this is a boat with the pedals, nothing else, you know. Cosmology is much, much advanced. And if you consider the sighting of UFOs, the 2 are mixed. For example, when they hover, when they stand, it's because they reverse their mass. Well, I can tell you a few words about this cosmological point of view. Well, it means
Let's
that.
try to move along here.
I don't follow the images. Yes, of course. Well, of course, we have been
I
contacted.
think you talked about that.
You want?
Let's go to the universe.
So you want a few words about Mufon? Mufon was considered as a hoax since decades because it was propagated by guys who are not serious. They want to sell you shirts with images to see. There is a huge, massive document. What is interesting is the scientific information, nothing else. Because scientific information, you can check if it works. If they tell you that they live in a planet 15 years old, light years far and so on, and they live that way, you cannot check that. But scientific information, you can say it works, it works not. And it works, it terribly works. And you know this story about the inversion of time, it is connected to the inversion of the mass. Well, I cannot develop that for you because it's sophisticated theoretical physics. But since 1957, people tried to introduce negative mass in a cosmological model. And it was rejected by the equation of Einstein. So it requires a deep modification of our geometric vision of the universe. Can you show you the equation somewhere? No?
We haven't got to the equations yet.
Where?
You want to talk about the attractor result?
No, the equation, there. So here on the left, you have the Einstein equation. Einstein equation, if you consider negative mass in the Einstein equation, you will get this interaction laws. And what does it mean? It means that positive mass attract together through Newton. It means that negative mass repel together by Newton. And then below, when the positive mass meets a negative mass, the positive mass escapes, and the negative mass chases after. You know, this is ridiculous. This is not physical. This is called the runaway paradox. So the guy considered that it was not possible to put negative mass in the model. And during 60 years, and how to manage that? You have to modify the model. You have to shift from one equation to two coupled equations. And in these two coupled equations, the first is the Einstein equation. So one equation was missing. You know, how is it difficult to sell that? You come to a laboratory and you say, you know, forget Einstein, you have something better. No, that's very difficult, but it doesn't come from me, you know. We got that from the documents, you know. And it works, and you have so many observational confirmation. In the paper, we have duplicated, and that you will get in touch soon. It showed that this model has a dozen of observational confirmation. It explains so many things. Right now, you know that astronomers and astrophysicists talk about dark matter and dark energy. You know, it's dark science. It's full of mystery. You replace that by negative matter. Negative matter replaces the dark energy and dark matter. But you know, this negative mass repels on, and you know that since 2011, a Nobel Prize was given to three guys who showed that the universe was accelerating. Of course, this universe is accelerating not because of mysterious dark energy, but just because of the content of negative mass that pushes the universe. It works. It works. And it explains many things. It explains spiral structure. It explains the confinement of galaxies, the formation of galaxies, and so many phenomena.
And this is a key point right here.
That's a very important point. And a very important point is that this coupled equation goes with a very puzzling vision of the universe. in general relativity, you may consider that we live on a surface, hypersurface, four-dimensional hypersurface. So it was the idea of Einstein, and we are following the lines of the surface. But when we consider a two-dimensional surface, you have two sides. But you consider that the length on the two sides are equal. But you can try that, consider the measurement of the distance are different if you follow the recto of the sheet or the vessel. They're different. And this concept in two-dimensional must be extended to a four-dimensional hypersurface with two sides. And that's what this coupled equation means. So if you can invert the mass of a craft and passengers, you will follow the underground, the other side of the universe. And then the length are 100 times shorter, and the speed of light is 10 times higher. So you get a factor of 1,000. So the conclusion is simple. Interstellar travels become possible, just possible. And what is the message of the scientific community now, right now? Well, there are thousands of planets, and certainly when you look at the sky, you must have people very intelligent, but they don't visit us. They don't visit us because it's too far. And you just consider the special relativity. It would take 1 century to come there. No, just 2 months. Because, yeah, well, this is the average time to visit us from a system which are less than 100 year life distance. It takes 2 or 3 months.
Just a quick question. The proper time, if they went back to their planet, would they have time dilation problems or?
No, it's like you take your proper time with you. And the question of the reversed arrow of time, it can puzzle, but it does just mean that the mass is inverted. My master is dead in 2012, Professor Suryo, mathematician. In 1972, he set a fabulous theorem and showed that when you inverse the coordinate of time, you inverse mass and energy. It's very difficult to grasp that. It means only that, when you go on the other side, your time doesn't flow reverse. You bring your clock with you, and so on. But this model explains also a fascinating problem. That at the beginning, you had a mixture of matter and antimatter. And the same thing would say, where is gone the antimatter? Half part of the universe missing. Well, this antimatter corresponds to negative mass antimatter. Negative mass antimatter. And as negative mass, the energy linked to the negative mass is m multiplied with the square of velocity. So the energy is negative. So negative particle emits negative energy photon. Are you able to see negative energy photon? I'm not. So you can't capture these photons. Your telescope cannot capture this photon. So these objects are invisible. But now I'd like to be back to Great-Tripolar. Can you?
You go back to where?
Great-Tripolar. This one. No, this one. So this is a discovery, a very recent discovery. It was January 2017. And what was done, there are 4 guys, Brent Tully, Yehuda Hoffman, Daniel Pomerade, Hélène Courtois. They published that in the top-level journal, Nature. And what does it show, At the center, we have our galaxy. And they made a study of a very, very wide volume, 1.5 billion light years size. And so it shows the field of velocity of the object and the galaxy all around us. Since many years, we knew that we had an attractor. It is called the Shapley attractor. Shapley attractors, it corresponds to 100,000 galaxies, and it attracts. So we consider that our galaxy was attracted by the Shapley attractor. But the more precise analysis of this field shows the existence, the great repeller. The great repeller is empty. There is nothing there. There is no galaxy, nothing. And it repels our galaxy at 600 kilometers per second. And now, as it considers this mystery, what does repel our galaxy at such a velocity? Well, Janus model brings the answer. Here you have a cluster of negative mass. And when you consider the very early age of the universe, cluster of negative mass forms the first. And then all matter is repelled in the remnant place. And all matter formed a structure like giant soap bubbles. And this comes from observation. You can check all that. Well, so this negative mass repels all matter. And this is the first imprint of such an object. And you cannot try to find anything, you won't find anything, because this emits negative energy photon. Well, another question is, well, you are talking to us about two different worlds, the positive world and the negative world, with positive matter and negative matter. What is the content of this second world? Do we find negative planet, negative star, negative galaxy? No. You know why? Because when matter gives a spherical conglomerate, it's like a protostar. You know, if you have hydrogen, hydrogen is created and create a cluster, spherical cluster, and then to form star, it has to eliminate energy by radiation. So you have a cooling time. And this cluster have a cooling time much larger than the age of the universe. So you must consider that as a big cluster that would never ignite. So in this side of the world, you have no atoms heavier than hydrogen and helium. You have no star, you have no galaxy, and you have no life. You know, well, it mustn't be very pleasant, but it's very useful for travel. That's, well.
Shall we talk about the craft?
Yeah, you know, about my talk, I think I have two kind of claim. First, the things that are published, the things that have won the barrier of the scientific community. And then this is speculative, because Guy would say, well, if you can reverse the mass, you could travel at higher velocity. Well, how do you reverse the mass? How do you reverse the mass? So this is speculative. The idea is consider a two-dimensional world. Two-dimensional is the surface. So in this world, an aerodyne, a craft is just a circle, and you are inside the circle. You are two-dimensional beings. And then you concentrate energy at the periphery. And this modifies the curvature at the periphery, so you can exchange the two surfaces, and the below part belongs to the up part. You know, I would say you take 2 bottles of wine, Bordeaux, and you put the two together. And then you transform it into 2 Chianti bottles. So the bottom of one bottle is transferred on the other side. So you have an exchange between these 2 spaces. And when a UFO craft disappears, just because its matter is reversed. And in this place, you have a void. And if you remember the story about Captain Mantell, Captain Mantell with his plane was trying to go close to a big UFO. And when the guy inside the big UFO saw this plane, he said, oh, it comes too close, let's go away. So he inverted the mass, it was a big void, and filling the big voids created annual aerodynamic perturbation that broke the airplane. And this is a very old picture about MHD. You know, MHD, you need to ionize the gas all around, and we made a lot of experiments ionizing the gas with microwaves. Then you have light, and even, you know, to achieve MHD experiments, you need segmented electrodes. And segmented electrodes, exactly, they are like windows. So when we were doing experiments in our laboratory, when the guys entered the room, he said, "You have captured a UFO." It was so similar. Well, and also, you know, when you feed this model with microwave, you know that the electric field is stronger when the curvature is small. And here you have this truncated of light. They are just electric lightnings. Well, on the right, you have a copy of a document received by my, yeah.
Are you referring to the curvature of the
Can we,
radio frequency, or are you referring to the curvature of the actual craft?
Can we hold the questions until after the presentation? Because it's just gonna slow things down.
Yeah. There is the master. Listen to Robert.
Yeah, I just wasn't understanding the curvature of the actual craft, or you're talking about the radio frequency, the
Well, you know, when you put some electricity on a metallic object, when the curvature is very strong somewhere, you have a lightning. You understand? Well, that's all. So if you have a flying saucer, at the periphery, the curvature is very strong. So it creates arcs. Okay? Well, we discovered that when we wanted to put microwave on the I said, look, it looks like the guys observe. Well, and on the right, you have that what looks like a fancy drawing. You know, it was found in Spanish documents, and it showed a flying saucer. And
Can I talk about the other two?
well, on the top and left, it comes from a Japanese testimony. Okay.
Right. Flight,
You know it. I don't know what is the second one.
So I'll mention this one.
Yes,
This is from.
Robert, we talk about
Robert,
I'll
closer
talk-
to the mic, please.
Yes, I'll talk a little bit more.
Thank you.
it.
Thank you.
That was too tall. This one is from the Japanese American Airlines. Was
It was JAL, I
JAL.
think.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
A wine shipment.
But you notice the shape is this acorn shape, very similar to what this document reveals about the UMO craft. So this came from a document that, about the UMO people. And this is another acorn shape. It was given to us by Susie Hansen. Susie Hansen is a New Zealand lady from New Zealand who has had experiences all her life. And this is the shape of the craft that she was taken in. So you see the similarity. What I'd like to do, if it's okay,
Go on.
is to try and get that video to work, because I want you to see this video. So if you'll give me just one moment,
Please do it.
I'm going to get this video going, I hope.
So the UMO, is that the name of the group of aliens that you?
It's the name of the planet. I will tell you about that later.
Wow.
Okay. Okay, I want to show this video. It was taken in the year 2000 in a place called Huancayo, Peru. And so this fellow, this videographer, was in this Catholic church service, which was in the middle of a basketball stadium or basketball court, very large. And that's why all these people were there. They were there to go to Mass, Catholic Mass. And so suddenly he looks up at the window near the top of the ceiling, and you'll see what happens.
This video was taken from a larger video was created in Cayo, Peru. It was taken about the year 2000. What I can observe is the motion of the vehicle and the fact that it's very difficult to, if not impossible, to focus on the object itself. The reason for that is that it may be surrounded, the object may be surrounded by some sort of gaseous substance or ionized gas.
Wow.
So you see that this is what Professor Petit, is talking about, that he got this result when he was doing his experiment in his laboratory. And this is what we call the MHD, right? Which you'll explain a little bit more. Possibly. We're not sure. But notice, many times this guy who's taking the video tries to focus in on the object. He'll go in and try to focus, but he can't quite get it focused because of this ionized gas or plasma around the vehicle. And also notice that it is bouncing around. Well, right now the guy with the camera is bouncing, but if he holds it still, you'll see the motion, up and down motion a little bit. And again, he's trying hard to focus, but can't quite get it in focus. This goes on for a little bit, so I'm just going to stop it right there.
This reminds me of that Area 51 video that they have that was released. That, it's not quite like a falling leaf motion, but it had that undulation and movement. It's very similar.
Right. So we will continue.
But the thing that you must understand, that the best way to capture UFO is a piece of paper and a pencil and mathematics. Exactly. That's the most efficient. Because you show that to scientists, they would say it's false, it's a hoax, and so on. But you have no hoax in mathematics. When you have something that works, that was better than the scientific model, you must admit that. So last year I went to 2 international meetings, and I'm going to do that again and again, to go to seminars, and I will convince my colleagues that we are contented. Because this is the main problem, Just imagine a scientist comes and he has a talk. First, is this talk well built? Oh yes, okay, it works. But then the guy said, it's not my idea. I received phone calls and letters. Oh, Jesus Christ, where do we go? But I have to say that because it is the truth. Well, I will tell you some words about this humor affair. This humor affair took place in 1965. Well, a guy named Sesma wrote a book about a contact he had with another planet. And then he received a phone call, and the guy said, well, we come from another planet too, we'd like to meet this guy. Okay, the Sesma said, well, I have the Venetian Monday, I have the Martian Tuesday, what about Wednesday? And then they sent to him letters, and what we just use what they say. They said it could be interesting to look at the reaction of the people when they hear about all that stuff. So in the room, they could scan the brain. You know, we are starting to scanning brain. It's very primitive too. You must imagine that within a century, we are going to be able to scan each neuron. So to see, I'm talking about something, how is your brain moving? So they asked it to Sesma, you just read the letters and we scan people. And he started to mix his own idea with the letters of humor. And they said, please, Mr. Sesma, just limit the talk to what we said. Don't add your own idea because it makes everything. And then, you know, other people were involved in this stuff. And this was developed as a net. And there were a dozen people involved in that. And then someday they received a letter, and the people from Rumo said, we have a shuttle that will come next week. We have 3 shuttles. One is arriving in South America, another in Germany, and the third in the suburb of Madrid. So we indicate approximate a place of landing. Some believed that, some didn't. And one was an engineer named Villagrasa, and Villagrasa came with a camera. He was not there when the flying saucer landed, but many people saw that. It was a famous case with imprints on the ground and so on. The flying saucer was just going to take people from Rome to get them back to the planet. And then another guy named Fagels was had a factory. He was riding his car to Barcelona. He heard at the radio, flying saucer has landed. So he made a turn and came back to Madrid. And then he met Villagrasa, and Villagrasa was there, and he said, we were aware that he will come. They said, who said that? Yes, the people who come to this planet, they said they would land. And I didn't take a picture, but Fayol said, I want to go further there. And then he tried to meet the people who were contacted, including Sesma. But Sesma was scared, you know, the thing was going too far, you know. So Fayol asked it to buy the documents. He sold this document for a ridiculous amount of money, and so on and so on. Well,
okay, I want to continue here. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we can't explain, but things that we've observed. Here we've got the Rex Heflin photo, and Heflin, I just want to mention that Heflin did see the underside of this craft, and said there was some rotation under there. It was a blue-green light that was rotating outward. And then notice this black band here, and then when the object left at high speed, it left this black ring, a black smoke ring, which Heflin said would not dissipate like ordinary smoke, but it was obviously there. And I did show in a previous slide that this was also repeated in 1959 when the black smoke ring was left. But this is the kind of thing that is still subject to speculation as to why that smoke ring was left. Now, Jean-Pierre, would you like to explain how these craft can turn 90 degrees at high speed?
This is an example of the mix of the two techniques, as I told you. MHD as a way to swim in the air, and mass inversion technique. So you see a UFO cruising at quite high velocity, Mach 10 or 20, but this is very primitive technique. And then the passenger of the UFO says, we'd like to turn on right. Okay, let's turn on right. How does it do? Well, they invert the mass. When the mass is inverted, they change the direction of the magnetic field. And when they invert the mass again, the energy is conserved, but the direction of the velocity is reversed. So you have the acceleration has no meaning. And even I can tell you that UFO has no propeller. They are not propelled by rockets. Even when they cruise in negative world, when mass is inverted, a quantum mechanics phenomenon make that the particle get relativistic velocity in order to save the energy. So either you are steady in our world, but when you go in the other world, you have relativistic velocity just to save the energy. So when they cruise from the Earth to another planet, they invert the energy, they have a very fast cruise, relativity cruise, and then when they think they arrive at the vicinity of they invert the mass and they stop immediately. You have no acceleration, no deceleration. And for quick turns, that's the same thing. You know? Don't try to manage that with ordinary physics. It has nothing to do with.
Yeah, that's perfectly clear how that works. Again, I want to go on to a couple other things because I think you should know about these strange things that have happened. 1968, Minot Air Force Base, a fellow by the name of Major Bradford running is flying a B-52 airplane. He's coming into land. On the radio, he hears some general telling him to go around and then fly over this launch facility where missiles are located at Minot Air Force Base. So he does, and he sees this object over here on the ground. It's oval shaped, it's got a crescent shape here, a little tunnel, different colors here. This is blue, red, white, something like that. And then he reports this, does a little sketch of it. This is the only sketch I have of it. And he lands, and the general calls him into the office and debriefs him on what happened here at this site. Well, what happened was that this 20-ton cover over the missile was literally lifted off its tracks and placed to the side. Not only that, but the fencing around the object, the missile site was crushed. So I point to this. In my case, they didn't do any damage at all to the missiles, but here, obviously, they did some damage. But again, it was a demonstration, I think, more than anything. It was just a demonstration of what they could do.
Was the fence demagnetized?
It was just one of these wire fences with what do you call it, barbed wire all around it, chain link, yeah, it was that sort of thing. The next interesting thing was what happened to Tex here. So Tex, that's not his real name, but he's a very reliable witness, very high placed in an aerospace company. That's why he doesn't want to come forward with his name. But he was one of those individuals that was sent out to one of the Echo flight birds to bring it back on alert. What we had to do is retarget this missile. And so he was working here in this bay, maintenance bay. He had a guard up top, and suddenly his guard shook the ladder and said, "Look up." And so he goes up there, he looks up and sees this orange-red ball of light hovering over the facility. He says, "Well, report this, but I have to go back to work and get this missile back up on alert." So he goes back down and goes through his checklist. And this is what he told me. He said every time I got to one particular point on the checklist, he thought the missile was going to come back up on alert, the missile shut down again. This object was still up there, but he tried this many times, he said, and every time he got to this particular point on the checklist, the missile shut down. Now, to him, he felt this rope of energy coming down this tube, and he said it was like the UFO was actually knew what he was doing and at what point in the sequence he was doing it. So something about that energy field that was very strange. And then I mentioned Susie Hansen. She was taken on that craft, and she was taken underwater. This was near New Zealand, and up to a rock face underwater, and taken to this entrance to a facility, an underwater base, extraterrestrial underwater base. But as they approached the entrance was open. She could see inside, but the ocean was not entering this tunnel. So she asked one of the ETs what the story was, and they told her that there was indeed a energy field or screen that was keeping the ocean out of coming into this channel. So there again, very strange stuff, which neither I nor Jean-Pierre can explain. Or can we, John? Okay, I think we're gonna kind of wrap this up, but you wanna start this at the end of the show?
I wanted to say, for possible things, we explain it immediately. For impossible things, we need some more time. They have no explanation about the field that makes the water impossible to enter this tunnel. But what I can say, we are living in a peculiar time right now, and the technique of interstellar star are within us within less than 1 century. It's a very short time. We are able to understand how the universe makes it possible, and we are very close to discover how to manage inversion of mass, So we are ready to enter the club, but we are not, we are dirty, earthen. I mean, something I found in the humor text that was very interesting. They said your planet had a breaking of the initial continent. On the Earth, at the beginning, you had Gondwana. And Gondwana was broken by the movement of the magma. Where does this movement come from? It comes from the birth of the moon. At first, the planet was working as usual, and then another planet came, and boom, it was a shock, and it gave the moon as an ejector. Now the astrophysicists agree with this theory. So the moon comes from a meeting of a planet with another planet. And this other planet gives the nucleus inside the Earth. And this is a huge mass, and this is a huge quantity of energy, of kinetic energy. This kinetic energy was converted into thermal energy. This heated the magma and broken the continent into parts. This is very singular. It's rare in our planetary system. Mars doesn't experience such thing. Mercury, no. Venus, no. We're on the only planet, and they say this is a very rare event. In the other planet, don't have that. Suppose we will not experience this, so our planet would be flat. Consider the mountain than Himalaya and Alps. Suppose you stop the movement of the magma. How long time will it take to flatten that immediately? 10 million years, a very short time, because it is grasped 1 millimeter per year. It's very fast. Well, if this mountain stay, it's because India is coming into Asia and rise the Himalaya and so on. So if something like that didn't happen, we would have 200 and 300 meters coming. And same thing for the depth of the ocean. And what would be the consequences? You have no barrier between the species. So what they say, in our planet, the number of species are 500 smaller than yours. And you have different human species, different color, different language, different culture. We have a single one. So all that, today, you consider the guy from New Guinea, they live at the age of stone. And here you live the third millennium. And all these people are together. You take people from iron, they live in the Middle Age. And to all these people, you will say, now we're going to have a big project, we're going to build craft and to go to another star. They don't care. So aliens look at us and they are very puzzled. What could we do? So they have decided an experiment to give information to scientists like me. Perhaps you are. There are many, I don't know. But this is my mission, is to tell people this is Earth stuff. We are visited. I proved that with mathematical papers. You know, if I was not true, all my work should be silly. You know? And this, the focus point is that we have a possibility to achieve travel in a shorter time, and interstellar travel are not impossible. That's the conclusion. And now this is really hard stuff. And I will go in university, I will go in meetings, scientific meeting, and will explain that. I have started that. No comment. Well.
Okay. Well, I don't think I could add much to that. I think the bottom line is that if we're going to be visiting other planets on other star systems, and we're about to gain the capability to do that, we don't want to export war, for example. We don't want to other planets. We need to get our act together before we really start something like that. Okay. I think we have time for questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, questions. And by the way, we have a special gift for the first 5 people that ask questions.
Yes, of course. Come on, come here.
So,
the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Please come up.
Come here.
We're going to give you a special gift.
Come here. The first one. Well, special gift.
Do you have the
yes,
gifts?
I think. Yeah, I think we have.
Okay. So let me show you what we're going to give you. This is on the back of my iPhone. We've got a little plastic thing, and when you lift this up, I don't know if everybody can see that. There's a little prism. What do you call that? No.
Grating. And so if you have a UFO and the light of a UFO, like point light, you transform it into a spectrum. So you may analyze the nature of the source. So and it has never been done before. It's recent. We have just produced that, and people will ask, how can I get that? Well, we made that with 3D printers.
Wow.
Awesome. 3D printers. And the file is on the web. You could make it with your own 3D printer, but instead, I think somebody will say, we are going to make it in great number. So, and to spray. Okay.
So the object of this is, if you see a UFO or think you see a UFO, move this up, take a photograph.
Yes.
And then we can go to a website where they'll do a spectrum analysis on the light, and then we can analyze what that light is made of, or where that might come from. So This is data collection, actual real data collection on UFOs.
So, this is your gift. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes.
High five. And then you will put it on your cell phone and manage to have the grating in front of your eye, and then you can take a picture.
Okay, please sit down now, and you can ask your question. Thank you.
Can you demonstrate that
Yeah,
for us so
present.
that we
Well,
can see what happens?
So, let's see if I can demonstrate this. I don't know if they can, no, they can't see that, but when you take a photograph with this thing extended, you can see the, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see the rainbow effect? Or the spectral? This, and that's what we're looking for, the spectrum of the light.
Okay, sure.
Okay, first question, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You'll find easy people to connect.
Wait, we gotta have quiet in the room here.
You said that she's seen the ETs, she's visited them several times. What were the colors, or shall we say, what kind of ETs? I have a reason for that.
We both had experiences. Which one are you talking?
Of the lady that went into the under the water,
Oh, you're talking about Susie Hansen.
Susie Hansen.
Yeah, she saw a couple of types.
The color.
What color were they?
Huh?
Gosh, I don't remember. Do you? I know. My wife has seen tall whites.
The reason I asked is because of the grays. I've had experience with them, and I wanted to know. if
You had an
had
experience?
some experience,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes.
When the craft switches into negative mass mode,
That's for you.
if I understood, the protons and the electrons behave differently when they're negative mass. than
Jump
the-
here, over here. Jump here.
You gotta hear the question, I guess. Speak up, Greg.
Yeah. It sounds like matter loses its integrity in negative mass mode because of how the electrons and protons behave differently. So when the craft goes negative mass, how does it preserve its structural integrity?
Well, you know, all the whole mass which becomes negative, it takes its own laws of physics with it. You know, its structures is kept completely. If your mass is inverted, you are still human beings. You're not a float in the universe. Your particle will attract together. You know, how are we built? We are built with proton, neutron atoms, and then all that are mixed together with electromagnetic force. Okay. So if your mass is inverted, your molecules are not destroyed. So the craft is still the craft, the people are still the people, and they cruise at relativistic velocity. The only thing they have to do is to be protected by the shock of very rare negative mass, other antimatter, because they cruise in antimatter medium, and the magnetic barriers enough to protect the craft against. You know that the Earth has a magnetic field, as this magnetic field is used to protect us from the solar wind. And here, when you cruise at relativistic velocity in the negative world, it's like if you had a wind of antimatter, but very, very weak. So a small negative magnetic field is enough to protect you against. Do I answer your question? Yeah? No?
I think so. The only thing that confused me is in your chart you had the protons repelling and electrons attracting differently. The Einstein's runaway paradox.
You know, the runaway paradox is avoided completely.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well,
Recently, December of 2017, videos were released of Captain Fravor, the USS Nimitz, the
yes.
pilot. And have you seen an increase in credibility to reports since this was seen, all over the world? These videos taken by an Air Force, a trained observer, which I think is more credible. I don't know how you can get anything more credible than that. Have you guys, in your experience, either letters or people you meet, seen that the general public now is starting to accept that these things are real? I mean, I don't know what kind of evidence you need. I mean, why would somebody not believe this? And when I tell somebody that, hey, there's trained observers, there's Air Force people, there's engineers, these are trained observers and they're seeing these things for years, they just look at me with a blank stare like I'm crazy. And I'm trying to, how do you convince people that these things are real? I mean, what else do they need?
a paper and a pencil.
Yeah.
I think that. Yes.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. Yeah.
That's dangerous. I am a dangerous man, because with a paper and a pencil, I can convince you. I can convince scientists. I can confuse them.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
Okay.
I was looking at.
Oh my Jesus Christ!
I was contacted seriously. I was doing this design, and we're really going to shorten the flight. This is all Tesla design. That's all Tesla right there.
Sometimes the drawing talk to me. Sometimes they don't. I cannot tell if it is serious or
Can you go
not.
back to the
that's serious.
microphone?
That's serious.
Both you guys go to the microphone and talk about this. This is important. We're not
That design, give it to me.
Can't hear you.
This might take a little
6 years
time.
ago.
This might take a little time to go
What do you
over.
got? What do you got there?
On that day, I had that sighting right there, and over a year, almost a year,
Yeah.
they gave me that design.
No,
And I've been.
I'm French. Speak slowly. I do my best.
This is all Tesla design. This is a cutaway section. It's a circular disc.
Yes.
And
Where does this sketch come from? Explain.
I told you, I was contacted.
You was contacted.
Go to the microphone, please.
Okay, guys. Why don't you come up here?
Yes.
And
Share it with the crowd. You just have
Can you explain?
this may take time. This may take a lot of time
Yeah.
to go over.
No,
but can you just give him a question, and then we can move on?
Yeah, I'm just saying that what he was talking about earlier is that shortening the time to for flight. This is it. It's a Tesla design. We don't have to carry any fuel. It produces it as we're moving.
Oh, you go too fast for me. You speak too fast.
I'm sorry. These Tesla coils, as this disc is spinning.
Go to the microphone,
yes.
please.
Okay,
Yes.
Over.
As this disc is spinning, these are Tesla coils, and it's producing the electricity.
Microphone.
It's producing the electricity that we need to get to where we're going.
Then I need to know how did you get this drawing?
I told you I was contacted 6 years ago. I sent Mufon the original pictures and contact that I had.
So you have
and
been contacted.
And nobody ever contacted me until right now. I got sent an email and they said, okay, they
You
finally.
speak too fast,
I'm sorry.
I cannot capture all your words. I'm French, remember.
Maybe better if you guys talk later. And,
Yes.
But it sounds like there's some similarities to the UMO crap.
Oh yeah, no, this is all electric.
Can you hold it up higher so that the group can see it? Thank you. Not in the light though.
And you're saying this is Tesla coil?
Yes, these are all Tesla
Technology?
coils here.
Okay.
Tesla coils, and this is like a big gyroscope. And this is the belly of the ship. This is the cockpit, and it's got the big, huge magnet down here. And for the North Pole, and the like you were talking about the protection field. You're talking about that protection field around the ship. Yeah, this produces that ring, and it's all cryogenically cooled.
We are going to look at this
Let's
later.
take a look at it later. Okay.
Give me a copy of
Because I think
that.
we're.
Yeah, but like I said, I was contacted, and this is what's going to get us there faster. We don't have to pack fuel. We're going to be creating fuel.
Okay.
Exactly.
We are interested in any kind of contact. Because
Well, okay, next question. Yes.
So I had a question for you, Mr. Salas. You were saying say during your experience that you received a phone call the first time, then you received a second phone call, is that correct?
That's right.
Did you actually see the craft yourself?
No, I did not. We were locked in for 24 hours. We couldn't leave our stations.
So I guess my question would be, what, you know, obviously the missiles, 10 missiles were shut down, which
Right.
is not a normal thing.
Right.
I don't think I've ever heard of that anywhere else, but I guess my question would be, what, other than that, motivated you to talk about this, to do a lecture like this? What continue, especially if you haven't seen it?
Okay. The reports I got were authentic reports. I mean, these guys were professionals, and like I said, the guy was really frightened. Within a minute of his call, my missile shut down. I was as confused as anybody about what happened. And when I went back to report this the next day, the squadron commander said it was not any kind of an Air Force exercise. They didn't know what it was. They handed me a piece of paper to sign. This was my squadron commander and the Air Force Office of Special Investigation guy that was there. I said, just sign this. You'll never talk about this ever in your entire life, otherwise you go to jail, etc. So I tried to forget this for about, what was it, over 25 years, 27 years, until 1994. I haven't gone into that because that's part of my general lecture. I didn't want to, anyway, detract from what Professor Petit had to say. But after doing the research and learning about the fact that not only my 10 missiles went down while UFOs were overhead, but 10 other missiles went down a week earlier while UFOs were overhead. And I know what happened at our site. And not only were the UFOs reported over our launch control facility, but they were actually over the launch facilities as reported by our guards. So all this information started coming out. I have accumulated a lot of evidence of my incident. The UFO reports were also validated by other witnesses. So I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but I can tell you that there is absolutely no question in my mind that the UFOs were the cause of the missiles going down. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, just to follow up. Just for the person who's never been in the military before, what was your exact position at that military base? Like you said, there were 6 men under you. How many men were on the base?
No. This was called a launch control facility. There were 2 of us underground in an underground capsule. We were called the missile launch officers. In fact, in 1967, he and I, the 2 guys in the capsule, could have launched missiles, nuclear missiles. We had the ability to do that. Now they've got more controls where they can override something like that, but at that time, we had that capability. So I had a lot of responsibility. Like I said, this was a very professional operation. Yes?
Those are Minutemen, correct?
We had Minuteman 1. They've got Minuteman 3 now. Yeah. Yes?
For the skeptic for action in the military, what would be your counter argument for the argument that Cold War and human interference with perhaps an illusion struck up to distract the guards while like a human went and interfered with all 10? What's the counter argument for that?
Okay, the counter argument is that the Air Force did a classified or secret investigation of my incident and the other one I just mentioned. Couldn't find a solution or resolution. The Boeing people that controlled the Minuteman system also did an investigation. I've spoken to the chief Boeing investigator. They could not find a cause, but even his supervisor verified that this was a UFO event because they had observed the UFOs themselves over the the missile sites. Again, if we had had some kind of an experimental aircraft that could have shut down our missiles, I think we would have advertised that by now, or it would have been demonstrated worldwide, just to show that we can eliminate nuclear war. You know, it's a long argument, but we could make a case. Yes?
So you said a day after the incident, you had to sign a document that you were
Yes.
never to speak of this again. Does that document still apply?
Somewhere that document exists, but
So they haven't come back after
they have
you?
not come after me, and the reason is because before I started speaking of these events as UFO events, I had accumulated quite a bit of supporting data in documents from the Air Force under the Freedom of Information Act, and I also had accumulated a lot of witnesses that would back my story up. So if they tried to prosecute me, for example, I think they would have had a hard time disproving it, and also they didn't want the publicity. So I think that's the reason I have not been arrested yet. Well, any day now. Any day now. Yeah.
I'd like to say something. You told us about the Nimitz incident and the fact that the movie was released and seen by people, and you say, but they don't react. You know, now avoid the situation. You have something, you must think about it. It's disinformation. Disinformation because the US Air Force released a document, and so the people say, you are going to know something, and then you have structures that appear, and people will say, we are going to watch, and you are going to work about this. And this is disinformation. I give you an example of this disinformation, Dr. Greer. Dr. Greer is a disinformation operation completely. And so on. And you have a lot of things like that. You have the same in France. In France, we have the JPAN. JPAN, they say, we are a service, we take the UFO problem in charge, and be confident, we work on it. And they don't do anything. Just to make the people believe that something is going on. They ask for money and nothing happens. And within the next 10 years, they will release new documents, and then people get sick about that. Look how many euro. The room is not empty. It's not full, you know. Robert sent a call. We are going to make a conference, we explain things. How many people came? You know, you are just 50. Well, it showed that people are sick of this, and you have fiction movies. All this kind of subject has moved into fictions. In your fiction intellectual world, it belongs to the fiction world. That's what it means.
But we're not going to give up.
Yeah.
Dr. Petit and I aren't going to give up.
Good.
So I got another question for the doctor, just for the people in the room that aren't scientists. What is the possibility that what we're seeing in the sky is a weather phenomenon that we just haven't discovered yet? I know that sounds crazy, but if I told you in 1965 that a phone has more computing power than the entire Apollo missions combined, you would look at me and say I'm crazy. I mean, could it be a weather phenomenon, or possibly, you know, interdimensional leaks that we're just seeing from other dimensions, but we've proven scientifically that there's more than one dimension? Could it just be leaks from those other dimensions? I mean, I know that we're not saying the science that we put on this board today is actual science. This is what we think. Possibly the possible science behind it. So I guess my question is, is there any possible science to support the fact that it could be weather?
Put a graphene on your cell phone and take a picture, and then you will have the answer. If it is a natural phenomena, you will have the spectrum of the water, of the oxygen, and so on. If you find some lithium or something like that, it's not natural phenomenon. Okay. And then the other answer is that what is about paper and pencil, mathematics. You cannot disinform.
Yeah. Besides mathematics, there's some hard evidence. There's real hard evidence. The artifacts that have been retrieved that are made of, for example, isotopes of magnesium that you don't find on Earth. And I've got that data, but there's other hard evidence that this is extraterrestrial phenomena. Yes.
Bob, was a Freedom of Information request made on the Minot missile facility where the 2010 cover was lifted off?
There was an investigation. You didn't see it. Tom Tullian did a very thorough investigation. He interviewed the pilot. Now, whether or not, well, I can tell you what happened with Blue Book. Colonel Quintanilla, who was head of Blue Book at the time, wrote a report and said that what they all saw was the Star Vega, and wrote it off. And that's what Blue Book was doing in 1968. And part of the reason is because the Condon investigation was going on between 66 and 69, or the end of 68. So they didn't want to cause any waves about UFOs. I take that seriously, otherwise they would have had to investigate it. And they did the same thing in my case. Yes, you had a question back there?
Yeah. Two questions, one for the doctor and one for you. So, first question for Mr. Salas. Having experienced something like that, what do you think the implications are as far as the revival phenomenon or what leads to that?
Well, the implications of my incident are that, and it's just not my incident. I've documented many other incidents involving nuclear weapons facilities, and also even nuclear power plants, where UFOs have come over in the weapons area. They've flown over, shown a beam of light on the storage facilities where the weapons are stored, and very simply shown a beam of light and then flown off. And again, in my case, it was simply a demonstration of what they could do. And I think it was just a message. The message was get rid of your nuclear weapons. And I've documented many cases of that. You had a question for a doctor?
Yeah. How exactly does one make mass negative?
Well, speak in loud voice.
How does one make mass negative? How is that possible? How do you do that?
How is it possible to make negative mass? You know, it's under investigation. It's a quantum phenomenon. I work with mathematicians, with specialists in the mathematical physics about it. I have not the answer directly. You know, I told you about two kind of purposes. The first is what is printed in the scientific newspaper, and the other are speculation. This mass inversion technique is speculative. I have no proof and I have no model to show you that. I just
a neutron star.
I accept the neutron star, of course, but what is strong is the model, cosmological model. And this, I'm going to fight for this in meeting, in the seminar, and so on. It's not so easy to meet people. Well,
yes, a question for Mr. Salas, please. If the conclusion you come to, and that we might all come to, that this is a warning not to use nuclear weapons, can we be pretty much assured from some of the data we get about UFOs in other adversarial geographic locations that they also would have the same lack of ability to counter any activity we might begin, or vice versa?
You mean would they stop nuclear war?
Yeah, would they also be frustrated in their attempts to launch?
Tell them what
Yeah.
happened in Russia, Bob.
I know there's a Russian incident, for example.
Yeah, in Russia, I think it was 1982, if I'm not mistaken. UFO comes over a launch facility and actually starts the missile on a countdown for launch. Right? And scared the hell out of the controllers there because they couldn't do anything about it. It seemed to be going through a countdown where it was going to launch the missile. But somehow it was stopped at the last minute.
One disbelieving soldier stopped it.
Okay. But I have no idea if the ETs would stop nuclear war. There's arguments for both sides. In fact, H.G. Wells made the argument in a book written in, believe it or not, 1914. He wrote this book called The World Set Free. You can look it up. Where he talked about a war with atom bombs, atom bomb war. And he came to the conclusion that maybe we needed to have a nuclear war in order to realize how important it was.
Yes, perhaps.
Not to do it.
And you have to know something. There is always something worse. Nuclear weapons were worse than chemical weapons. But there are something worse than fusion bombs. It's antimatter bomb. You know, when I was talking about mass inversion, when I started to, when I wanted to publish my work in 2013, I asked to Alien, is it convenient to do that? He answered, yes, it's your decision, you're free to do it. But if you do it, just think about the military application of the work. And not immediate application, but if you can invert the mass, perhaps someday we can invert the charge. And if we invert the charge, we convert matter into antimatter. So we make antimatter bomb. And if someday we make such bombs, they will be 100,000 more powerful than our fusion bombs. And it was written in the UMO documents since 1964. They said you may build weapons more terrible than that you own right now. And we hope you will never use it. What I can tell you is that the military in every country, their objective is just to pick some information to make more sophisticated weapons all the time. They are completely stupid. I remember a guy from Secret Service, French Secret Service. He said, 20 years ago, I was asked to come to Norway because we had a special device that made it possible to unlight a target with infrared. And the Norwegian had not this kind of thing. So it was around Estelen. Estelen is a peculiar place where UFO come very early, often. So he was there and he could see on the screen the UFO coming, and then the military tried to put the light on it. Just why? To send them aside, to put it down. They are completely crazy, Military, they want to shut down a UFO to see how it works to make. And that I can swear that's true. They have that in their mind. In France, in the States, everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I've got all these questions. If we're gonna go ahead and just assume this story's fact, that this actually happened, which I have no doubt it did, and the government knows this, right? There's been multiple incidences where these things have come from the sky and have shut down nuclear weapons. What's the motivation to still have a nuclear budget? Why would our government continue building these things? Sure, yeah, money, but I mean,
nothing else. Money
I don't know, it seems to me that if there was something like that actually came down and said, that's, like you said, that's a message. right? Like,
Right.
stop effing around with these things, or there's going to be some major consequences.
And the government knows this.
So
Little
I guess my
elements.
question is, what's your best assumption as to why they're ignoring that advice?
Well,
Other than
again,
money,
like
than money. Because there's a lot of things in this world that make billionaires more billions.
They are not rational. They are not rational. Definitely not. You
Right.
understand? Not rational.
There's a mindset. I think what Dr. Petit was saying was there's a mindset in the military that bring us more weapons, more and better weapons, because we had this military-industrial complex, which we were warned about by Eisenhower, right? That says we want to have a capability industrially to keep up with the Russians, for example, or anybody else, to build the best and greatest weapons we can build. And so if you can bring me some technology from extraterrestrials that will help me do that, please do that. We're going to keep this all secret, but we want to keep making money at this. It's about greed and power. The reason I believe there's a cabal holding these secrets is because of greed and power. That's the only reason. It has nothing to do with whether or not your Christian beliefs would be injured or anything else.
Financially.
Think about the sentence of Ronald Reagan at United Nations. You remember?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan, his eyes were enlightened. Suppose someday some threat would be, and we will all together with the United States to face this threat. That's stupid. We are like primitive people with a bow. And so, it's something coming, we'll all take our bows and we're ready to send arrows to this machine.
Susie Hansen, you spoke to her briefly. They took her into an underwater base in the ocean. Do we know where it was? And the second part of that question is, are there other bases that have been documented that also exist underwater?
Well, there have been other instances of UFOs going underwater and staying underwater for some time. You may have read about some of those. The one up near Malibu, up in Ontario. What was the other one? Shag Harbor. Huh? Shag Harbor.
Sure.
Yeah. So, in fact, the video that we were just talking about that was just released by this so-called secret group that was, the F-18 video that showed the object. It came out of the water. That's when they first saw it coming out of the water. So there's a lot of evidence that ETs or UFOs have underwater bases.
Taking advantage of
and take advantage
areas
of those areas which are hard to get to, yes.
Sure, because man's not exploring these areas.
Right.
We know more about the surface of Mars than we do.
There are probably underwater bases in the Bahamas. We had a lot of observations there.
That's more of a statement than a question. That some years ago, I was watching a YouTube video. There's a Japanese company, electronics company, that had created a water manipulation device. And they hooked it into a pond, and out came shaped letters. Now, I went back to that, and that video was deleted.
Probably because it was CG.
I don't think it was CG, but yeah, I mean, of course, with YouTube, anything's possible. But it looked pretty dang convincing.
CGI could be referenced.
Yes.
Quick statement of question. One motive for the nuclear weapons program is a heavily subsidized nuclear power industry. That would be true of any country that has a significant reliance on nuclear weapons like France, especially like the U.S. My question is, many of us have heard the incident where Ben Rich, Stumpworks, following some sort of alumni meeting, said we now have the technology to take ET home. Einstein was wrong. We understand he was mistaken about and understand the equations better. So the question is, do some people already know what you have discovered, and we're sort of going through an independent path of rediscovering what a secret space program, for lack of a better term, may already know?
I hope I have understood your question because you know, remember in 2000 I went to a special meeting in Brighton in England, and there I met two guys. One was working for Carlyle. Carlyle is a company very closely related to weapons, and what I could find there is that the first developed the magneto-hypersonic torpedo, and the other was working on the Aurora project. Well, we had a strange meeting there, and when I came there, one say, "Are you Dr. Petit?" "Yes, I think I am." "Well, I knew you since 1977. "Wow. So long?" "Yes, he gave me your papers to analyze about MHD." So I was glad to meet him. And we were talking about MHD, and I said, "Well, you know a lot about it, but I thought it was abandoned in all countries." No, I work on the MHD torpedo." And I said, "How does it work?" "Like in your books."
Tell them about the Russian developments, the recent Russian developments.
So Robert asked me to talk about recent Russian development. You know, I've made a video, two videos in English. So if you have patience, you will look at these two videos, each 1 hour each one. But I try to explain that. And as you know, recently in March, President Putin talked about new weapons, very sophisticated and very high performance. You have a submarine torpedo, much faster than the submarine, that can go very deep and carry huge 100 megatons bombs. And then you have a cruise missile propelled by nuclear energy. Third, you have a Mach 10 missile. And fourth, you have a hypersonic glider. So I don't know what are the reaction in your press. People are skeptical. So I made this two video and I explained it that this is true. I think this is true. And you know, the Russians have succeeded to take place in hypersonic world. Hypersonic world, it starts at Mach 5 or 6. And if you want to go further, then you need MHD. You need MHD. Why? Because it makes possible to avoid the shock wave. And at such high velocity, you will have 10,000 degrees, and your missile will vaporize, and so on. You know, so it takes us back to the year 2000, and remember the Project Ajax. Ajax was the Russian version of the Aurora craft. Does the Aurora craft does exist? We don't know, but it's feasible, and the Russians had the same project. And this hypersonic glider, this is just the following of the Ajax project. Ajax project was an airplane with turbofan, and turbofan you cannot feed it with very high temperature, so you need MHD control inlet. This MHD control inlet transforms the velocity of the fluid into electricity, and then you can feed your turbofan with moderate temperature and propel it with that. That's very clever, and Aurora should work the same way. I published a book about it. Well, so this Avant-Garde is the name. It's 2 meters long. It's a small object. It has no motor. It is a glider. What is a glider? A glider is a machine that uses the gravity. the energy is provided by the gravity. You know, I used to pilot glider, perhaps you do. Well, when you have glider, you have no water, don't need it. But you can fly, you can turn right, left, and so on. So what is this hypersonic glider? It's a small machine, you drop it in the very high atmosphere. It flies at 100 kilometers, between, I would say, 30 to 50 kilometers high. And then the velocity is converted into electricity, and you have a very agile object, you know, much more agile than a rocket. It flies at Mach 20. You cannot stop it. You cannot send a missile to intercept it. And even if at first the missile has not enough velocity, and it's not agile enough, because this object can make turn about 2,000 miles. You know, it's not a guided warhead. In the last time, you can pilot this warhead in order to hit a target, but just some dozen of kilometers, nothing else. That avant-garde is something completely different. So I have explained all that in my videos. Watch it. You all have to answer it. I would say this is true.
Shall we
All right,
stop it?
any other questions?
Yeah, I
anybody?
got a question.
Go ahead.
I recall sometime back, I don't know, a couple, 2, 3, 4 years, where there was some Russian and American ships off the coast of somewhere. And one of the Russian airplanes flew over our ship and actually shut it down. And I don't recall the specifics. I wonder if you guys, does that ring a bell? Or
Shut the ship down?
yeah, all the electronics, everything went dead. The thing was just out there floating until they got it back up and going.
So like an EMP kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, do you know anything about EMP weapons? EMP weapons?
Yes.
I'm sure they exist.
Yes,
So very possibly they could have been trying them out, see if they work.
Test run.
Yeah. Isolated case.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about the advance of science and technical technique, Russian technique. Of course, they are not children to them, and they had a strong breakdown when the USSR falls down. But now they have recovered, and what Putin showed is just now we are back in the game.
With the recent Nimitz case and things that have come out in the last 4 to 6 months, do the two of you think we are in a period of disclosure as we speak? And if not, what is it going to take to get people to really look at this phenomenon in a serious manner?
I don't know.
I mean, because if shutting down 10 nuclear weapons isn't enough, I mean, what is?
That happened in the 60s.
Yeah, that's
Right, no,
That wasn't a wake-up call at all.
Your guess is as good as mine that when how we're going to get the disclosure. This group that was broken away from this secret organization
To the Stars Academy.
to the Stars Academy. My opinion of it is, I still have a question about it.
SSDD.
They're asking for money, so.
Yeah, they're asking for
That's
money.
all,
They're a
yeah.
corporation.
Help go off. It's kind of
So
off the record.
I don't know how much good information we're going to get out of that, but I don't want to discount it either.
It's been pretty good. I mean, the one thing about that information that's been kind of nice for me, especially speaking from someone who's had his own experience, it's nice to show them that, an interview with an Air Force pilot saying that he saw something and then it's back with video.
Right. But you know what? This happened in Mexico. The Mexican pilots have got the same kind of video. With a lot of UFOs, it's happened in other places. Well, we'll see.
Not the first gun camera footage I've seen.
No,
You
that's
know,
not.
suppose you are an alien. Suppose you are an alien. You come on the Earth, and we are a group of aliens. And I ask you, what about we could do about Earth? What do you suggest? I suggest we have stopped the massage, it didn't work. We have shown, perhaps you could take Trump and take
Please.
and fly in
Let's not
space.
start any interstellar war, okay?
You know, what could we do? Just think about it. You are people coming from other stars, you come on the Earth, and you ask, what could we do with this kind of people?
I was going to ask, if you don't mind, the question is how do we get spiritually to where we are going to be technologically? I mean, right now we're practically killing ourselves with nukes and the plastics, and I mean, you know, we're actually a very destructive culture. How do we change that? Do you think that maybe the extraterrestrial hypothesis that if people find out that's true, that's going to have any effect on them? I don't think so. I mean,
I have only my personal answer. I receive information, I make science, and I publish that. That's all that I can do, but I will continue to do that.
Yes.
All right.
One last thing. The things that we have that are secret as far as our space program, our flying machines, the designer of the SR-71 and the U-2, in an interview he once said, if I can talk about it, it's obsolete. They say we're not only 25 years ahead, we're 50 years ahead of where most everyone thinks that we are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
a little bit of food for thought.
You're not going to get any argument, except maybe about the number. It might be a little low. And I'm ex-military too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, before anything hits the public, when it's developed, especially if it's developed in a wartime situation or with defense capabilities, it gets used quite a bit before a different version is released to the public with, let's say, less lethal capabilities. Lasers are a great example. For years, you couldn't buy a laser pointer. Those were used for targeting and acquisition of targets and things like that by the military only. And all of a sudden, with miniaturization and circuitry becoming more cheap, we ended up getting a layman's version of the same thing. And like Stanton Friedman likes to say, you know, a laser isn't just a better light. It's a completely different type of light altogether. And again, it's something that might have come from recovered technologies. We don't know what we don't know, plain and simple. Granted, there's a lot that we don't know, and especially when it comes into the defense industry. Most of the UFO program has been moved to private industry now. Why? Because the Freedom of Information Act got out. People can write and ask the government to be accountable for what they do. Well, you know, that really caused them a lot of problems until they figured out how to get around that. The simple solution is you piecemeal the projects out to private industry, and you know, they don't necessarily have to know where the prototype came from when they're working on it, but it becomes their property, their patent. You develop this, we give you the patents for it, you make all the monies on it, we just want the working model. And that's been going on for 50 years at least. So yeah, no, we don't know what we don't have. Aurora, I bet you a box of donuts, yes it exists.
TR3?
TR3B does exist. It used to be on the Federation of American Scientists website. In fact, you used to be able to see pictures of a few different models of it. Most likely, what was seen in the Belgium wave is what the TR3B was modeled after. Now, we don't know if it was the first production model and then they came after. But what's really interesting about the TR3B and C and the predecessor, just the TR3A, was that the Federation of American Scientists fully acknowledged its existence for many years They had all the information and documentation about it on their website until I started writing about it. And a couple people complained that we had pictures on the Mufon website of actual triangles. And for maybe 6 months after that, I referenced people to that website and they could find the information there until all of a sudden one day, it was scrubbed clean. No mention of the TR3B or a few of the other prototypes that were on there. And I think what it was is the scientists were open and sharing technologies on their website. They had no problem with that because they figured no one went and looked. But as soon as people started going and looking and seeing what they were looking for and finding correlations between other sightings, well, that information disappeared. Mike Schrott likes to tell a story of when they were developing, they called it the Dorito, when they were developing it in the plant. And literally, you could not bring Doritos in your lunch bucket coming into work there while they were in development of this. You couldn't even say the word Dorito. Bad. And that's how, security works. It's not just that you have the security clearance, and a lot of people get mad when they find out, I had that clearance and I didn't hear anything about that. Well, it's not that you had the clearance, you weren't in the right compartment. That's the way people say the government can't keep secrets. Well, yeah, what about the Manhattan Project?
Exactly.
Many scientists, a couple thousand people working together, some of them on the same project, yet they didn't even know what the person next to them was doing, the other part of the same item.
Compartmentalization.
Exactly.
That's how they
And,
do it.
we are very, very good at that.
Yeah.
Too good, maybe. So where could this all happen? Well, we have, as you said, these bases underwater. Well, do you think there's only one? They could have them all over the place and you wouldn't know. I'm sorry.
Is there data on that where they actually have?
There is not any identified underwater base, period. There was an anomaly off Malibu that Jimmy Church spotted on Google Earth photos and said, this has got to be it. It's the Shoyo Mount. It's an anomaly. The way Google Earth takes photos is from a satellite up above, okay? And it gets a reflection of the image back up. It makes a pass, and these images are stitched together. Next pass, it takes a bunch of photos. These photos are stitched together, and it keeps going until all the photos are stitched together, and then you have a larger image. Please tell me how you could take a photo from a satellite and make the light turn left and get an entrance to a doorway.
Did you see the pictures? I think it
I'm
was
waiting.
a KLM jet, a captain that was flying over towards Asia over the ocean. He saw something red, thought it might be like volcanic. When he came up on it, there was pictures published of this. It was a complete underground base.
Okay, electrohydrodynamics. Did I say that correctly? Electrohydrodynamics. The property of electric fields shaping the way water flows and moves.
I thought you said that was CGI.
No. Shooting out of a cannon, yes. Electrifying the bow of a ship so that it cuts through the water without drag is what I'm talking about. And that is not CG, that's fact. And that's what it's used for. Not shaping letters and shooting them through the air.
So you don't think that exists?
No, you cannot do that. I'm pretty good at physics, okay? In fact, I'm the physics expert for the movie Occupants. No, you cannot cohesively hold a letter in shape through the air and send it. You're fighting the force of air. You're fighting the force of gravity. What's holding the letter together after it leaves the cannon? No, I'm sorry, that's CG graphics, plain and simple. Easy, no brainer. Anyway, so yeah, you can electrify the edges of any object. We do it with B-52s so that they can cut through the air easier. We do it now with our naval ships so that they can cut through the water. How do you think a UFO traveling at 5,000 miles an hour enters the water without even making a splash? Okay? It's a totally different technology. You're not using something pushing through the air and using force. You're using something that's contained in its own environment and bending the environment around it so that by the time it passes through, the environment hasn't been changed whatsoever, one little bit. And that is one of the effects that you see in any type of strange craft that's flying, okay? It's one of the properties is it has a contained field. It's not using known propulsion like a rocket or a thruster or a jet or anything like that. It's using an electronic type of propulsion involving a field, and it's contained in that field, and that's how it escapes the other effects that are interacting with above. I think I got that close to right. You got something to add at the time?
You know, last April, Robert suggested something. He said in February 2019, they will have a meeting of AAAS, Advanced, what is exactly?
Advanced Aerospace Threat
Advanced
Program.
American Society for AAAS. So Robert say, why don't we make a common paper? We have to submit that on the 9th of April, so we did, and we will get the answer at the beginning of January.
July.
July. So very soon we'll have the answer. Will this answer be negative or positive? I don't know. But if it is positive, I will come to the United States. I will join Robert, and we're going to explain that.
Thank you for clarifying that. So to let, yes, sir.
You were speaking briefly about some these aircraft that crash in the water. This gentleman here to my right has some amazing plans. How did you get those plans? Because when you were talking about how that aircraft was designed,
I had my sighting,
was so advanced.
When I had my sighting, I've had 12 of them. And when I had that one, I was telepathically contacted. It was just like a thought was implanted. There was no voice, no nothing, just a thought. And I'm like, I started doing like.
So you're the architect that drew these?
I'm actually an architecture designer.
So you drew the plans, but this information was telepathically sent to you.
Correct.
So that's fascinating what you've got there. And I'm surprised we didn't talk more about it because that's one of the most advanced things I've heard in a long time.
That happened back in 2012. I sent Mufon the pictures and the information that I had gotten on their website. And I was never contacted till now. They sent me an email. I thought, oh, maybe somebody looked at the pictures and finally realized there's something there.
Who contacted you?
That makes a lot of sense.
Sounds like a future event to me.
The LA guy.
I'm the LA guy.
No, he's a Mexican guy.
There is no one with Mufon in LA other than Earl and I.
Was it Maria?
There you go, him.
Mario.
Yeah.
He's not
It's the
Mufon.
former LA.
Oh, Steve Murillo?
Steve Mario.
That's
Bad
why-
news. Okay.
That's why.
Enjoy. Anyway, well, everyone, first I want to let you know that coming up, our next meeting is going to be in August. I'm not sure on the exact date, but it's probably going to be the second or third Sunday in August. We will send out the emails and clarify that. Coming up, if we can get enough interest, I know, the holidays always come so fast after summer and everything, and then people are busy with Christmas and the get-togethers. But afterwards, we're going to try and stage a meeting or a picnic or something for February around the time of the Battle of LA at Fort MacArthur. Now, they have a reenaction of the whole event every year. And I thought, it'd be kind of cool if we get a little presence with Mufon there and some people, and, we can make it kind of a fun day for everyone, bring some food or whatever, and enjoy the celebration. And I think it should be something, if it works well this year, maybe we could do it as a yearly thing. Because really, Battle of LA is kind of the biggest thing on record that happened to Mufon Los Angeles. There have been other great sightings around here, but not any with papers on the cover of the LA Times. That's kind of phenomenal, and it's held the test of time. So it's one of the more impressive events that I like to celebrate anyway. So keep that in mind for February. If you aren't on the mailing list yet, go to MufonLosAngeles.com, get on the mailing list. I know I promised last meeting I'd be making some big improvements to the website. but my wife had her 4th heart attack, and some things have happened since then, and it just didn't get done yet, but it will, I promise. So please give some love to the website, and I'll give some love back. Linda, you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, if they want you to email them, they can put their email when they sign up, and you can email them.
Okay. Yeah, if you haven't left your email address or signed the list there with Linda, please do that, and I'll get you added to the MailChimp email address. If any of you need to contact me at any time, my email address is on the website as well. Please feel free to get a hold of me at any time. And again, if you have any sightings, don't wait. File a report with Mufon. And again, as I reiterated the last meeting when we were talking about the little 7-year-old girl that got the great video, best video I've seen, take your time and observe if you see something. Don't worry about, what's going off, or maybe if I go get my camera, because when you come back, you'll be seeing empty sky. If you have your camera with you or your phone, that's good, and you can use it, that's great. But the best thing you can do is to watch it and observe it. Don't take your eyes off it, and as long as you can, see what it's doing, where it's going, and make note of that, and then write it down as soon as you can, and then file a report with Mufon. That is, again, the pencil and paper. What an awesome weapon that can be. Take your notes,
Grab another witness, that's the other thing.
If you can, because the more the merrier.
Hear you, and get their name, get their info, because we want corroborated report.
And if you're really brave, you can follow them and chase them through town, right? Laura? Would you like to say anything real quick about your sighting? No? Do you mind if I talk about it real fast?
It's a good one.
Okay. Laura Austin had a fantastic sighting back in Glendora. Now, you might have seen the video that Earl and I did that was on, what was that
It was
website?
BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed, and then it was on the Mufon website for a while, where we talked about this case. This lady saw a UFO hovering and chased it down. She followed it with her car, her and her friend.
This lady here?
And they followed it as far as they could until it stopped and was hovering. We got some really great information from their sighting because they did what I just said. They watched it, didn't take their eyes off it. They saw it, and they had the tenacity to follow it. I don't always recommend that, but hey, if you can do it safely, that's cool too.
Did he acknowledge your presence at all?
Oh, yeah.
Possibly, and I think I want to speak to you
They
ladies before
slowed
we
down and
yeah.
they gave us
Yeah.
some time.
I'm gonna let.
They did give us some time to actually observe it and then gone.
Glendora?
No.
We actually had another person that verified the sighting too from the Laverne area.
3 witnesses.
So.
And one was not connected with them.
Right, and so the object's leaving the Azusa Canyon area in a trajectory that another witness in Laverne was on that end and saw it coming there. So it verified the sighting spectacularly, I might say.
How long ago?
This was in December. I was going to say February, but yeah, because it was
October. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't.
I was going to say it was November when I came down and met with you. Yeah.
About 9 months ago. Is when, yeah. And that is one of the best documented, just everything about that case. My personal favorite. I was lucky. I got that case. All right. Hello. I was very lucky. I'm the one that got I got both of those cases that wound up being the same craft, except they saw it coming, and the gentleman the next town over saw them going the next day. But it was the exact same. And it started out with 2, they were like orangey red orbs, flying treetop level through the town of Azusa, which is interesting. It's Azusa is A to Z USA, right? It's what the town was named after. It just kind of a rural area, but
anyhow, these two ladies here were just leaving the grocery store, and they saw these two orbs flying, and they took chase after them. Later on, I had Laura redo the drive using a hunter's tracking app, so I could get the exact coordinates, and and exactly where they were saying they lost sight of the orbs, because there were a couple times where they lost sight. It was in the proper area, where a building was blocking what they were seeing. But anyway, they followed this through town. It was a UFO car chase, for God's sake. And they wound up getting stuck in a cul-de-sac, and they couldn't really get out. It's by the park there that they have. So they were watching the two orbs. Now they kept on traveling on over to the foothills over by Azusa, and they were doing the proverbial falling leaf motion, where they're kind of staying there, hovering together, and just going like this. Their attention was, there was a bright light that was behind them. And their attention was, I believe, I forget which of you saw it at first.
When I told her, Laura, wait, it's over here. And we were at the front, and she's driving, and I'm sitting there checking it out. And she says, oh, and then she tried to turn around. That's when we got stuck in the cul-de-sac. And I told her just to back up, because we didn't have time to turn. And sure enough, by the time we turned, it just...
They saw a full-on flying saucer that was hovering over a house that was there.
As a light, and then it got closer and closer, and then it was right there. That's why I said it had to took time enough to give us a few minutes to see it.
Yeah.
Not on the hill, and then suddenly there was a craft right
there.
Yeah.
There.
And it's an interactive phenomenon. I mean, that's not unusual. I mean, we hear this all the time. Somebody will notice a UFO, they'll take chase, or they'll try to get a picture or whatever, and it'll come up to you. I mean, it'll get closer. There's something that happens with our brain waves and the craft. And theirs, yeah.
That's exactly what happened here. Exactly what happened.
And now for you, you say that the knowledge was imparted to you. Was it like in full cloth? It was just like dropped in, and you suddenly had this knowledge inside of your...
No, the whole thing took about a half hour.
Wow.
I thought it was a Mylar balloon, like a gold Mylar balloon that was tumbling up and it was going to hit those power lines, and I was just waiting for that. And it just went past it. I'm like, oh wow, it just like went right through it. And it wasn't a Mylar balloon, because it started drifting my way. Just like you said, it started drifting my way, and I'm staring at this thing going like, wow, it's not a Mylar balloon. What is it? And as it's getting closer, it starts doing that shape shift and it looked like a helicopter. I'm like, oh, it's a helicopter. And then, but I didn't hear no noise. I'm like, oh, it's not a helicopter. Then it changed into a plane, and I'm like, oh, it's a plane. Like, no noise. It's like, oh, it's not a plane. Then all of a sudden, the thing just pop into a desk and sit right overhead.
My goodness.
And I'm staring, and like you said, don't go get the camera, stare at it. And I was going back and forth. I got to get that camera. Finally, after 15 minutes, I said, I got to get that camera. I ran inside, I came back, and it was still there. I got a couple pictures. I put it on the post, and it was gone, just like that. But I got to see the three vortexes, like the air. I knew it was spinning, because I've seen the vortexes, and they were sitting just like three different vortexes spinning in different directions. And that thing just like sat there for for another little while, and then that's when it started popping in like all these whatever it was, images or whatever it was. I was just like, and I went inside. As soon as it was gone, I went inside and started drawing. I just like started drawing, and over like 7-8 months, it just kept giving me more information. And I've seen so many sites, and I've had witnesses, and I've got pictures. I've got a thumb drive right here with a bunch of pictures if you want me to close.
Question: do your photos have the EXIF data still intact?
It should. I mean, I even got the old camera at home where when I took them, it was an old Kodak.
Give me a call.
Yeah, give him this. Yes. He gets one of mine as well. Yeah, we
My email's on the front bottom right corner there. If you can attach them as attachments,
You have a separate one?
but make sure that the EXIF data is still intact, please.
Okay, fantastic.
Sir, what's your name?
Sal.
Sal? If you could please make sure the EXIF data is intact when you send me any photos, I will be real happy to look at them. But I'll tell you right now, no EXIF data, no love.
Yeah, we gotta have the originals, because people, we have people that mess with their photos.
But I bet
I'd be very interested in seeing if you got the originals still, yeah. And that goes for anybody. You know, if you have any photos that you do manage to get, I would love to look at them, as long as you don't take off the EXIF data or run them through Photoshop first. Raw data is what I'm really interested in that I can verify. And if you manage to get some with the new little spectrum analyzer that Jean-Pierre was kind enough to give a few people, we can hook up with that website and see how some of those photos turn out as well. I'm kind of interested to see what those come out with. Now, was it the April issue, the disc case I did? I think it was April or May.
I think it was April, I think. Pretty sure.
Yeah, the April issue, yeah. We had some photos of a disc that little girl in Wilmington shot the photos and then the video. And if we had something like that, where we could analyze the spectrum of the light coming off this object, it would have made it a lot easier.
Oh yeah. I
had to do major analysis on this thing. A lot of people looked at it right off the bat and said, that's a blimp. And granted, that was my first guess too, it's a blimp. But once you analyze the gamma and drop the colors and everything and look at it, you can find that the light was contained to the object. It wasn't an incandescent type light. That means it didn't shine away from the object. I'm pretty sure had you had something right next to the object, you wouldn't have even seen any of the light on anything else. And I think that's because it's a property of the field itself. And I'll reiterate again, any of you that have seen the photo of the slow UFO, and if you look at the back part of the photo, the part of the craft that's facing the photographer, you'll see a zone of total blackness. And the only way I can possibly explain that is that the field negated light coming back through it. And you know, I've seen other photos of UFOs with the same type phenomena. That one you showed that Heflin took had that black area in it. And you know, light's a funny thing. That's how, you know, the whole basis of photography is you're getting the reflection of light off the image coming back to you through a lens. And so it doesn't take much to distort or change that light when it's coming back in. You know, it could be a breath on the lens causing enough moisture there to where it reflects light, making it look like extra orbs or haze or things in the photo. The most common is people are outside on a misty day and the tiniest little dot of mist on the lens will reflect light if you're pointing your camera that way. And you'll be convinced you're looking at a spherical or disc-shaped object right there in front of you. Yes?
In 1968, did you guys have anything about sightings in 1968?
Mufon was founded in 1969. However, before that, I believe John Schuessler has extensive records of sightings that occurred before then, back when it was the Midwest UFO Network, I think, before it became the Mutual UFO Network. So they do have, and I believe we still have some of those reports in the MUFON archives. Slowly that stuff is getting moved into our computer CMS system, but all that's having to be keyed in manually.
Well, if you do check Puerto Rico 1968 and see if you find anything in there.
I would like to speak with you about that before, and I had questions with Laura when I interviewed her, because do you have any trouble with, well, I'm going to throw it out there, radiation sickness?
Actually, I was cured with cancer from radiation. So I know that I get sick. No, I have registered in that one craft was around, the last one. I had different tastes and stuff like that. My hair grew a lot.
She said you might have had some red blotchiness too.
I did have red blotchiness on my face for a couple of days, and then it went away. But
See that? That's why I tell people you really don't want to get too close to these things. The last thing I would advise anyone to do especially if it's a UFO crash, is to approach it.
Well, what do you do when you're silent?
Pardon?
What do you do when you're in silent? How do you feel with emotion?
Then you're probably protected from any of the effects of the field or anything like that. No, face it, any object that comes through the atmosphere from space is going to be bringing down residual radiation with it, enough that can make you sick. Now, if it's also got some kind of a power plant driving it that produces a field or some kind of a radioactive output, that as well can make it sick. Now, the reason I say this is, anyone familiar with the crash in Miami, Mexico? No? Okay, well, we tracked a UFO coming in. I believe this was in 1971. CIA tracked the UFO as it came in across the Gulf. It was coming in across the Panhandle. And about that time, a Cessna took off, too, from, I believe it was El Paso area, and was flying towards Mexico. And the two paths intersected on radar. So the NSA was interested in this because they were tracking the unknown fast object. And so they waited for a satellite pass to come by, and they were able to find where the crash occurred, the debris from the plane and whatever it was the plane hit, and a Mexican military convoy on the way there. So the next pass, the military convoy is there, but it looks weird because the doors are open on the convoy and there's like people laying on the ground. So we sent a team in, rapid response, because we were pretty sure it was a UFO that crashed there, crashed into the plane. We sent a team in, and sure enough, all the Mexican personnel that had gone to the crash site, every one of them was dead, and from what I hear from Ruben Uriarte, there was about 30 personnel there that had expired around the low bed trailer that they had to carry the object they recovered, and then the convoy trucks. So our group went ahead and dug a big pit, put in the wreckage from the plane, and I'm not sure if the UFO wreckage went in. I think some of it was recovered, according to the story. But the wreckage from the plane and military personnel all into the pit. They let off a low-yield tactical nuke and buried it off, and the evidence is still there in the pit. Everything burned. But and then we took our team took the UFO and went to Atlanta, I believe, and then from there probably up to Wright Pat would be my guess. But the thing is, even the military, their best trained, weren't trained enough for coming into contact with whatever it was. It could have been biological, could have been radioactive. In either case, it was fatal. Another instance of crash retrieval story, a gentleman in Alabama, again, at one of the bases, touched an ET supposedly on a stretcher with bare skin without gloves. And within a week, he died of really rare blood poisoning. So every instance, I can think of no reason why you would want to approach either a crash craft or an entity rapidly. Exercise caution, because you're coming into contact with things you have no idea. There could be radiation exposed, there could be biological elements that turn your blood into a sponge in a nanosecond. So yeah, call in a professional. Even when we show up, our best investigators, when we show up on any type of a crash or suspected site, we use Geiger counters, we use electromagnetic field detectors, and we go very slowly. And if there's a sign of anything, we stop and back off. It's not worth dying over, plain and simple.
But there was 50 of us, and there was a boat ship, it was not a tank ship, and I didn't know.
This was Puerto Rico one.
Yeah, 30 years later, my brother Roy, who was also in this relation, we had forgotten about it on the next day. 30 years later, we're both talking in a room about like this, pointing at each other. And we're saying at the same time, you remember, my mom's thinking we're freaking out. And so we went outside to talk about it. And I go, look, do you remember how cold it was? He goes, what are you talking about? I go, the graves were there. And he goes, tell me everything. So they took me in the ship. I was on a steel bed. They never spoke to me, but mentally, we talked. He told me not to be afraid. They weren't gonna hurt me. And it took me many years for me to say anything about this. But I wanted to get hypnotized because there's more to this conversation. Because when they were talking, she said something to me, and I go, because it's not time yet. Before I could even say that or think it, it came out of my mouth. And I'm going, wait a minute. There's more to this that I don't know. And someday I will know.
Yeah, well, maybe a suggested block, but could just be your mind's way of dealing with extreme circumstances as well. I would be very careful if you do get some kind of hypnoanalysis that they don't put any leading ideas or leading questions, and just try and retrieve and let you talk rather than them talking. And then you probably get a lot more accurate reading.
Because I really, I was very private about it for a long time. Until now, I'm talking about it to right now. And there's, like you said, there's certain EPs because I'm talking to them, and they aren't here to harm us, and they are here to help us.
That group.
Yeah, they really are.
It's like I tell people, they don't all come from the same place, and they don't all drive a ego.
Exactly.
I'm going to go ahead and shut this off. Unless anyone else have a question, I want to say thank you everyone for coming. You're what makes this happen. You are Mufon Los Angeles. Thanks.
Thanks again, Jim.
Oh, thank you.
Is this it? Is that from? It's recording?
Yeah, man.
We know based on
Come on. Get a picture of you, prove.
Uh-oh.
You can do this in a wheelchair.
It's terrible. Okay, Robert. So I just put it on your desktop.
This way?
Yeah, there it is right there. So you can put it where you want it. Now it's only going to have the sound from back here. I've got the sound.